Okay, we begin today the Gemara on Daf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top of the Amud. The Gemara here is discussing a machlokes between Rebbe and the Chachamim regarding a person that's mekadesh a wife after he did chalitza, that is. Right, so the question is whether the kedushin will take effect or not. Rebbe says it depends. If he told her he's being mekadesher as a regular wife, then it takes effect, even though it's a issa lav, lo yibane, but nevertheless, we don't pass like Rabbi Akiva, and it takes effect. But if he gives her the kedushin l'shem chalitza, then it does not take effect. L'shem yibum, I meant, l'shem yibum. So then, after chalitza, there is no yibum, so that does not take effect. Whereas the chachamim hold that it makes no difference. It doesn't make a difference if he's whether it's l'shem ishus or l'shem yevamos. Either way, it will take effect. Even if you told her l'shem yibum, it still takes effect. So the Gemara brought before a few pshatim in this machlokes. The Gemara here is going to bring another 3 pshatim in this machlokes. So maybe, 3 pshatim. Let's see. Rav Shravya, that's where we're holding. So the Gemara, Rav Shravya Amar b'chalitza ksheira. If he gave his yevama a good kosher chalitza, so then ida amarla, and he told her hiskat sheli bezikas yevamin, that now I want to be mekadesh you, and he used this terminology, I'm being mekadesh you based on the zikah that you have to me as yevama, kula alma lepliga leimahani. So nobody would disagree about this, that it for sure does not work. He gave her a regular chalitza, and now he's trying to use that zika of the yevama for the kedushin. There's no zika, there's no connection left anymore. The machlokes between Rebbe and the Chachamim here is the chalitza psula kemiflagi. The chalitza that he did was not a good chalitza. It was a pasala chalitza, or it was inferior chalitza. Why? We had a few cases before about that. If a person, for example, gave first a get and then chalitza, so then the chalitza after a get is not a regular chalitza. So over here, mar sovar. So according to Rabbi, chalitza psula peiteres, even though it was a pasala chalitza, but nevertheless it still patters her completely, and therefore after this he can't be mekadesher based on the zikah that he had with her. But Omar Sava, the Chachamim say chalitza pasula ena peiteres, because he gave her this chalitza which is not a regular good chalitza, so therefore there's not pater her. So now he's mekadesher with the zikah of a yevama, that kedushin will still take effect. Rav Ashi says another pshat. The Kula Alma, both Rebbe and Chachamim agree, chalitza psula ene peteres, that if you give a pasala chalitza, it is not fully pater, it doesn't fully cut off the connection you have to her. But over here the machlokes is different. B'yesh tnai b'chalitza kamiflagi. They're arguing about a person that gives his yevama chalitza with a condition. Rashi says, for example, he makes with her a condition, this chalitza should take effect if you give me $200. Now the question is whether that condition even matters. Does it take effect at all? So Mar Sovar Yesh Tnai B'Chalitza. So Rebbe says that the Tnai that you made in the Chalitza took effect. Sorry, that's the Rabbanan rather. The Rabbanan say that the Tnai that you made for the Chalitza took effect, and therefore, since she did not fulfill that Tnai, so the Chalitza didn't take effect. So if now you go ahead and you're mekadesher, even the kedushin, the shem zikas yevamin, that you still are basing the kedushin of the zika of the yevama, it takes effect because the chalitza did not take effect. But Umar Sava, Rebbe's opinion is ain't tnai b'chalitza, that a tnai that you say when you give chalitza is meaningless. The Torah said if you give chalitza, the chalitza takes effect. You don't have a koyach to go and insert a tnai into this chalitza. It does not take effect, and therefore after chalitza, you can't be mekadesher based on the connection of zikas yevama that you had before. The final pshat, the Gemara says here in this machlokes is Ravina Amar. Ravina says the kul alma. Everybody agrees yesh tnai b'chalitza, that you could add a tnai to the chalitza, and if you don't fulfill the tnai, the chalitza does not take effect. But over here, there's a machlokes about the concept of a tnai itself. The tnai kaful kamiflagi. They're arguing about a tnai, whether you have to make a double tnai. As Rashi here brings, the source of this concept of making a double tnai is learned out from Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. When they wanted to enter into Eretz Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu made a condition with them that they're going to go fight with their brothers that enter into Eretz Yisrael, and he made a double tnai with them. If you're going to go, then you'll yarshin. If you don't go, then you won't. You have to say both sides of the condition. So the question over here is, if you don't make a double tnai, will the tnai take effect? Mar Savar being a tnai kafel. So the Rabbanan hold that in order for the tnai the t'nai to take effect, you have to make a double t'nai. And over here, because a double t'nai was not made, so the chalitza, so the t'nai the t'nai did not take effect, and the chalitza did take effect. Okay, so let me switch that. So when it says here Mar Sava, this is the Rebbe. Rebbe holds that you need a t'nai kafel, and therefore, since he did not make a t'nai kafel, the chalitza took effect. Mar Sava loy b'inon t'nai kafel. But according to the Rabbanon, you don't need a t'nai kafel, and therefore the t'nai will take effect. So because the t'nai took effect, so therefore the chalitza is not a chalitza, so therefore you can still be mekadesher even based on the zikas yevamim that you had before. Okay, this is the conclusion of all these pshatim in the machloikis between Rebbe and the Chachamim regarding being mekadesher isha after chalitza, trying to still use the zika of a yevama. Now the Gemara goes back and explains all the details of the Mishnah that we had in the beginning of the Masechta. Right? The Gemara here put all of the Mishnayos of this Perek into one Mishnah in the beginning of the Perek on Daf Nun. So let's see. It said in the Mishnah, Cholatz v'asa maime v'nosan get to Baal. So what did it say over there? That basically the Mishnah said two things. First it said, if you do chalitza, and then after chalitza you try to do something else, whether bia, whether maimer, whether get, so after the chalitza nothing works. And then the Mishnah also said, once you do bia first, which is the yibum, and then after that you try to do something else, so also nothing else works. But what was the lashon of the Mishnah? The Mishnah said, ein achar chalitza klum, that after chalitza nothing takes effect. The Mishnah does not say that after the bia nothing takes effect. I pointed this out when we learned the Mishnah there. So the Gemara here asks on this. V'nisni nami ein achar bia klum. The Mishnah should also say ein achar bia klum. It's speaking about two different things. The first case it speaks about is when you did chalitza, and then the next case after that it speaks about when you do bia first. Why does it only say ein achar chalitza klum? It should also say ein achar bia klum, that once you do bia nothing follows. So the Gemara says, Abai v'Rava damri tavayu. So Abai v'Rava both say, Tni ein achar bia klum. You should read in the Mishnah, they had a girsa, they say you could say in the Mishnah, ein achar bia klum. Just like you say, ein achar chalitza klum, the same thing is also true. Once you do bia, after bia, there's nothing. So the Gemara says, but v'tana didan, the Tana of our Mishnah does not say ein achar bia klum. It says in the Mishnah, ein achar chalitza klum. Why did he only say ein achar chalitza klum? Because hataras yevama l'shuk adifalei. In a case where you do chalitza, there's a bigger chiddush and it's more beloved for him to speak about this, because by bia, what is it saying? Once you do bia, the yibum, now she becomes totally your wife. That's it. But by chalitza, the chiddush is that she becomes mutter to anybody. That's a chiddush. So it's a bigger chiddush, or it's more of a point to say that she becomes totally mutter to everybody. So therefore he mentions that. And it's self-understood that the same applies to bia. That once you do bia, she becomes your regular wife. The Tana doesn't spell it out. He just writes ein achar chalitza klum, and you'll understand also that ein achar bia klum. Next thing it said in the Mishnah was echad yevama achas, echad shtei yevamos. That these halachas that we spoke about over here is when you have one yevama with two yevamos. And then the Mishnah also said if you have Yevama achas, again, what is it? They change over here the gears. So Yevama achas and shtei Yevamos, yeah. Okay. So Dr. Gemara Masnisen the loike benazai. What it said in the Mishnah over here does not follow Benazai's opinion. Why not? Because Benazai said, the Tanya, we quoted this before already, Benazai said, Yesh maimer acha maimer, that if you do have a case where the first maimer takes effect, and then the second maimer will take effect, when is that? B'shnei Yevamin v'Yevam achas. If there are two brothers, two Yevamin, and one Yavam gives maimer for this Yevama, then another Yavam gives maimer for this Yevama, so then both maimers will take effect. Ve'ein maimer acha maimer, but there is no maimer. You don't have one maimer, then another maimer that can take effect. B'shtei Yevamos v'Yavam echad. If it's two Yevamos and one Yavam. So over here, Benazai is saying, if there's two brothers and each brother gave maimer, it will take effect. But in our Mishnah, it clearly says that the same halacha will apply when you have two Yevamin and one Yavam, that one maimer after maimer will not take effect. So therefore, our Mishnah does not make this distinction Benazai made. So our Mishnah is not like Benazai. Now, next thing it said, one of the cases in the Mishnah was Ketzad Maimer Lezu. So the Mishnah said, what happens if you have two Yevamas? You gave Maimer to one Yevama, and then you did Chalitza, then the Mishnah continues and says, and Cholatz Lezu. You did Chalitza for another Yevama. What does the Mishnah say after that? that what you do is Ma'im Lazu. Just let me make sure I have the right case of the Mishnah. Yeah, Ma'im Lazu v'cholatz lazu. So then what you have to do is you give a get to the first Yevama that you gave Maimer to. And once you give a get for her, now everything is good. So you have a get for that Maimer, and then the Chalitza was done for the second one. The Chalitza that was done for the second one takes care of the Zika of the Yevama, and it disconnects them. That's the Mishnah. So now the point that the Gemara is going to focus on is, the Mishnah is saying that what happened over here? That you gave Maimer for one, and Chalitza for a second one. Now the main point, the main chiddush of the Mishnah is to say is that even though you already gave Chalitza, but that Chalitza will not remove the Maimer. You still need a get for the Maimer. The Mishnah does not, though, choose a case to say that you did Maimer and Chalitza to the same Yevama. The Mishnah could have said the same Chiddush by saying you gave Maimer to this Yevama and then you did Chalitza to the very same Yevama, and you still need a get. What did the Mishnah instead say? You did Maimer for one and Chalitza for another. Why does it say you did Chalitza for another Yevama? So shall we say the fact that it says you did Chalitza for the another Yevama, Mesayeh Leil Shmuel. This will prove what Shmuel said. The Omar Shmuel said, Cholatz lebalas maimer. When you give Chalitza for one of the Yevamais that you gave her maimer, loy niftere tzarasa. This will not pater the tzara from Chalitza. Even though usually when you give Chalitza to one, it paters the other. But over here, because when you give Chalitza to the one that you gave Maimer to, it's not a fully effective Chalitza. Because after that Chalitza, you still need a get. So this Chalitza that you give to the one that you did Maimer to will not pater the tzara. So over here, you see, that's the case, the way the Mishnah designs the case. The Mishnah said, you did Maimer for one, and then Chalitza to the one that you did not give Maimer to. Why is the Mishnah choosing to say the case dafka in such a eifin? To tell you that the Chalitza has to be done to the one that you did not give Maimer to, not to the one that you did, because it's not going to pater the tzara. So it seems to prove what Shmuel says. And also, another point the Gemara says, V'tuyofte de Rav Yosef. And what it says in our Mishnah also seems to disprove what Rav Yosef said. What did Rav Yosef say? So we had this a few times before in the Gemara, where Rav Yosef says, in a situation where you have two Yevamos, one of them is kosher and one of them is pasul, you should give Chalitza to the one that's already anyways going to be pasul to a Kayin. Why? Why should you go and give Chalitza to the one that's kosher to a Kayin and then pasul another woman, not necessary, that it's not necessary for the Kayin? One that's anyways pasul that one to the Kayin. Right? He used the example. He says if you're already spilling out the water, so if someone else could use the water, why spill it out? So over here, what does it say in this Mishnah here? You have the one that you gave Maimer to, and that one you gave Maimer to, you're going to have to give her a get. So you're going to have to pasul it to the Kayin anyways. And still, the Mishnah says, do Chalitza for the second one. Why are you doing Chalitza for the second one? The Mishnah should have said the case over here is that you're doing the Chalitza and the get to the first one. Why should you give Chalitza to the second one and you're spilling water or you're ruining it for the Kayin that he can't marry her now? So it refutes what Rav Yosef said. Okay, now Tosfos points out here that when the Gemara says Tiyuftu de Rav Yosef, it doesn't fit with what it just said, Mesayeh Leil Shmuel. Because according to Shmuel, you can't give Chalitza to the first one. Once you did Maimer for the first one, Chalitza for the first one is not effective. When the Gemara says that it's a Tiyuftu de Rav Yosef, that means forget about what Shmuel said. If we don't hold what Shmuel said, and you do have the option to give Chalitza to the one that you just did Maimer to, and still the Mishnah says, no, you're giving Chalitza to the second one that you did not give Maimer to, and you're pasuling her, seemingly unnecessarily, to a Kayin, this will refute with what Rav Yosef said. That's the pshat in the Gemara here. But the Gemara says, this is not a raya either way. Not a raya to Shmuel, and not a raya against Rav Yosef. Why? Because mi katani chayleitz. Does the Mishnah here say the term chayleitz, which means it's giving you an instruction, this is what you have to do. You must give chalitza to the second one that you did not give maimer to. Chalatz katani. It says in the Mishnah, just a matter of fact, it's just giving you the story of what happened. That in the event that maimer was done for one yevama and chalitza was done to the second yevama, so then you just have to go back and give the get to the first one. Di'evet, this is what happened, but it's not telling you that you must give chalitza dafka to the second one. So therefore, it's not a raya to what Shmuel said, and it's not a raya against Rav Yosef. Weiter, it said in the Mishnah, get lezu, v'get lezu, that you gave a get to one yevama, and then you gave a get to another yevama. Okay, so what does the Mishnah say? You still have to give a chalitza for both of them. Now, the terminology that the Mishnah uses is tzricha is chalitza, which would sound like what the Mishnah is saying is they both still need chalitza. You're going to have to give chalitza to both of these Yevamos that you gave a get to, which is an unusual thing, that you have to give a chalitza to two Yevamos. So says the Gemara, why would you have to do that? So this seems to prove what Rabbi Bar Avona said. Chalitza psula, when you give a chalitza, which is not the regular chalitza, it's a pasala chalitza, so then both brothers are going to have to give chalitza. Usually when one brother gives chalitza, it patters the other brother from giving chalitza. But if it's a chalitza psula, it does not patter the other brother. So over here, once you give a get, and after the get you give chalitza, that's called a chalitza psula. And it says in the Mishnah that they both need chalitza. And the Mishnah continues and says the same thing also. If two brothers gave a get to one Yevama, now it's mashma from the Mishnah, the Lashon tzricha is chalitza, that both brothers would have to give chalitza. Why do both brothers have to give chalitza? Because it's a chalitza psula. So the Gemara says, no, it's not a raya, because my tzrichais, when the Mishnah uses the plural term of tzrichais, it doesn't mean that you need chalitza for both Yevamos, or that each Yavam that gave a get has to give chalitza. Rather, tzrichais the alma. It's using a plural term to say that this halacha will always apply in any case that this happens, but not that for these two Yevamos you actually need chalitza for both of them. You don't. Then the Mishnah said, get lezu v'cholatz lezu. Here the Gemara repeats exactly what it said before. That when you have a get, before it was talking about when you had case of maimer first and then chalitza. Here it's the same thing, but just a get. First you gave a get to one Yevama, and then you gave chalitza to the other Yevama. So why does it say that you gave chalitza to the other Yevama? Why not to the same Yevama? There should be a raya to what Shmuel said, that you can't give a chalitza for the one that you already gave a get to, because that's a pasal chalitza. So it's not going to work for the tzara. So to have it to yuftu the Rav Yosef, and it also refutes what Rav Yosef said. Why aren't you giving chalitza to the same one that you gave a get to? You're pasaling a woman unnecessarily to a kain. So again, the Gemara answers, Mi katani chaylitz. The Mishnah does not use the term chaylitz, which is giving you an instruction that you have to give chalitza to the second yivama. Chalatz katani diyevet. It's just using it as a matter of fact that this is what happened, that you gave chalitza to another yivama. Then the Mishnah says, chalatz v'chalatz, chalatz v'chulu. So again, the Gemara repeats the same point it said before. Here it's just talking about two different Yevamis. You gave chalitza to one and chalitza to another, or chalitza to one and then you did maimer or bia to another. So the Mishnah concludes, Ein acha chalitza klum. After chalitza, nothing takes effect. And then it talks about also the fact that if you did bia, and it does not mention Ein acha bia klum. So the Gemara says again, "V'lisni nami ein acha bia klum." Why doesn't it say ein acha bia klum? Abai v'rava damri tavayu tni ein acha bia klum. You can read in the Mishnah that it says ein acha bia klum. The Tana Didan, the Tana in our Mishnah does not say that lashon. Hataras Yevamo l'shuk adifile. He wants to tell you the halacha that after chalitza she becomes mutter to marry everybody. That's a big chiddush, so therefore he mentions that. Then the Mishnah said, "Bein yavam echad l'shtei yavamis," whether it's one yavam that is doing these things that we mentioned here in the Mishnah for two Yevamos, or if it's the reverse, or if it's two Yevams with one Yevama, in both of these cases, the halacha is going to be the same. Okay, so what did it say in the Mishnah? That after you give chalitza, so then nothing else takes effect. That's the continuation that the Mishnah says over there. So the Gemara now asks him this. Bishleim le Rav Yechanan Amar. Now Rav Yechanan says, we had this machlokes earlier, a long time ago here in the Masechta. So Rav Yechanan says, the Amar kula beise belav koi. What this means is, after the Yavam gives chalitza to the Yavama, so now, what's the issa that he has to marry this Yavama that he gave chalitza to? Only a lav. What's that lav? The lav of lo yibana, that he's not allowed to marry her anymore. Okay, and now Rabbi Yechanan comes and says that that's not only for this Yavam that gave the chalitza to this Yavama, but all the other brothers as well. All the other brothers, for them to marry this Yavama, it's only a lav. So therefore, what's the chiddush of our Mishnah? When our Mishnah says that after chalitza, that no other kedushin would take effect with this woman, the chiddush is as follows. Itzrich lashmi'inon, so now the Mishnah has to tell me, the ein kedushin toivsin b'chai v'lavin. That even though for this brother that did the Yibum, and for any of the other brothers, it's only a lav, but still, after the Chalitza, no Kedushin will take effect, and he's coming to tell you, there's a big Chiddush, that this is like Rabbi Akiva's opinion, that after there's a Chalitza, and now it's a Chi of Lav, the Kedushin does not take effect. Rish Lakish's opinion is the Amar Kula Besa Bakar is Kai. Rish Lakish says for the Yavam himself that gave the Chalitza, for him to go marry this Yevama, it's a lav of Lo Yibana. But for the other brothers that never gave the Chalitza, for them this woman now is a Issachar. Which Issachar? The fact that she was Eishes Achiv, she's the wife of their brother that passed away. So there's Issachar for them. So Itzrach Lashminan the Ein Kedushin Teifsim B'chai V'Krisis. Is it necessary for the Mishnah to say that if any of the brothers would go and be Mekadasher after the Chalitza, that it would not take effect? That's what the Mishnah is saying. If another Yavam comes along and gives her a Kedushin, it won't take effect. It's talking about Shnei Yavamin. Even by Shnei Yavamin and Yavam Achas, so why does the Mishnah have to say that? It's a Chiyav Karas according to Rish Lakish. So there's no Chiddush here. Malach Rish Lakish says, if you're asking this question, let me point you out another few things it says in the Mishnah that also seems to be no Chiddush whatsoever. Well, the Taimeich, according to your reasoning, Sefer the Ktani. In the Sefer of the Mishnah it says, Boal, he was Boiler, he did a regular Yibum, and then Vasa Maimer. And then he goes ahead and gives her a Kiddushin, this Maimer mit Rabbanon. Itzrich Lashminon, does the Mishnah have to say that over here the Maimer won't take effect? He has to tell me den Kedushin Teifsim Be'eshesish, that if you give a Kedushin for a Eshesish, it doesn't take effect, it's fully his wife. Obviously you can't give a Kedushin for an Eshesish. It's a Chiddush. Elo, so the answer is, Aidi Ditani Hataras Yavam Echad V'Yavam Achas. Once the Mishnah comes and tells me the halacha regarding one Yavam with one Yavama, that once you do Chalitza, so then after the Chalitza, for that Yavam, he can't go and be Mekadasher. So for him there's a Chiddush, because for that Yavam it's only a lav. So Tananami Shtei Yavamais v'Yavam Echad. So it also goes on to tell you the case regarding two Yavamais and one Yavam, even though seemingly there's no additional Chiddush here. But he brings all the cases regarding two Yavamais and one Yavam. And then V'aydi Detani Shtei Yavamais v'Yavam Echad. He shows you how the case applies to two Yavamais and one Yavam. Tananami Shtei Yavamin v'Yavam Achas. He goes on to tell you how the case applies by two Yavamin and one Yavama, even though there's no Chiddush there, not according to Rish Lakish, because for another Yavam it's a Issachar, so it's obvious that in such a case it wouldn't take effect, but it's Aidi. Once the Mishnah plays out the case in one case, it shows you how it applies to the other cases. Right in the Mishnah it said, Cholatz v'asa maimer v'nosan v'chulu. So over here again, the Gemara is going to point out certain things that seem to be totally extra in the Mishnah. There's no Chiddush. After Chalitza, the Mishnah said, if after Chalitza you did Maimer, or after Chalitza you gave a get, so nothing takes effect after Chalitza. So the Gemara now asks, the fact that the Mishnah says that after Chalitza, if you give Maimer, the Maimer does not take effect. So what's the Chiddush here? Itzrich. The Chiddush is as follows. Because I would think maybe there should be a Gzeirim Rabbanon. Nigzer Maimer, the Basar Chalitza, maybe I should be geyser that this case where you give Maimer after Chalitza, I could confuse this with another case. Otu Maimer, the Kami Chalitza, with a case where he did the Maimer before Chalitza. The Maimer before Chalitza takes effect. The Maimer after Chalitza does not take effect. But maybe we should say that even the Maimer after Chalitza with the Rabbana should take effect, not to confuse it with the case of Maimer before Chalitza. Kamash Malan, the Gazrina. So over here, therefore, that's the Mishnah saying that Maimer after Chalitza, even with the Rabbanon, there's no Gzeira, does not take effect. So that's understood. Elo, Cholatz v'nosan get. Person did Chalitza, and then after Chalitza, now he goes ahead and gives a get. So the Mishnah is saying that the get is nothing, is worthless. Lamali. Why does it have to say that? It's obvious. It's like if you give a get after Chalitza, it's like you're giving a get to a woman that's in the street that has nothing to do with you. What's the Chiddush here? Says the Gemara, now your question you're asking here, according to your reasoning, I'll ask you a similar question regarding what it says right after this in the Mishnah. The Mishnah afterwards follows and says, Baal, if he was Baal, he did Yibum. And then Vasa Maimer. After the Beila, he did Maimer. Baal, the Nasan get. He was Bailer, or he gave her a get. So over here as well, there's something the Mishnah is saying that's not a Chiddush. And the Gemara explains, if he was Bailer and then he gave a get, so the Mishnah is saying that once he gave the get, that she's now like your regular wife, and you don't need any Chalitza additionally. So that's a Chiddush. Itzrich. Why? I would think to say, Nigzer get the Basar Be'ila, or to get the Kami Be'ila. Maybe I should be geyser that I might confuse a get that you give after he was Bailer with a get that he gave her before he was Bailer. When you give a get before he was Bailer, so in such a case you do need Chalitza after that. When you give a get after your Bailer, you don't need Chalitza. But I would think you might confuse the two, and you should always need a get. Again, you should always need Chalitza after you gave a get for your Yevama. Kamash Milan, the Loy Gazrina. So that's the Chiddush of the Mishnah, that you're not geyser this. If he was boiler, she becomes his regular wife now, and then he gives her a get, and no additional chalitza needed. But this that the Mishnah here says that if a person is boil is Yevamos, and then he goes and he gives her the maimer, the Kiddushim of the Rabbanon, Lamali. Why does the Mishnah have to say that the maimer does not take effect? She's his wife. How could you give a Kiddushim for a woman that's your wife? Why would I think that takes effect? So the answer is that you're right, the Mishnah is saying things that are extra, but it's only saying it because of the other case where it has to mention it, as the Gemara here explains. Because by the case of chalitza, when he gave chalitza first, and then he does maimer. So over here, to say that the maimer does not take effect after chalitza, there is a chiddush. So tananami baal v'asa maimer. So also by the case of Baal, it mentions that he gave maimer after he was boiler, even though over here it's not a chiddush. And the same thing in the reverse. Aidi, the boiler misni baal v'nasan get, because it has to mention the case where he gave a get after he was boiler, and that is a chiddush, as the Gemara just said, that you shouldn't confuse this with the case of when you gave the get before you were boiler. So taninami chalatz v'nasan get. So regarding chalitza, it also mentions the case where he gave her a get, even though there is no chiddush at all. Okay, the last thing that the Gemara discusses in the end of the Mishnah, Bizman Shehi v'chulu. So in the Mishnah it said that there's a machlokes between the Tanakama here in the Mishnah and Rab Nechemya. Right, so the Tanakama says when it comes to chalitza, if a person gives the Yevama chalitza, it doesn't matter at what point he gave a chalitza. He gave a chalitza right away or chalitza in the middle somewhere. Either way, once you do chalitza, nothing else takes effect afterwards. But when it comes to being boil her, so the Mishnah said, only if he was boil her right in the beginning, then the be'ilah is going to take effect and nothing else takes effect. But if you did it be'emtza or b'soiv, then the be'ilah is not going to be fully taking effect. Rab Nechemya, however, in our Mishnah said that just like by chalitza, at any point, the chalitza is good, and same thing with being boiler. At any point, once you're boiler, nothing else takes effect. Now the Gemara is going to bring a third opinion here. So the Gemara Masnisin the Loikai Tana. What it says in our Mishnah is not like the Tana over here in Abraisa. The Tanya Abba Yossi ben Yechon and Ishir Shalayim Oimim Mishum Rab Meir. He said in the name of Rab Meir as follows: Achas be'ilah va'achas chalitza. Whether he's being boiler or whether he's giving her chalitza bitchila. If it's in the beginning, if he did that right in the beginning, the first thing, ein achrei klum. Then after this, nothing else will take effect. But be'emtza or b'saif, but if he did it in the middle, if he already did something else before or and after, or b'saif, or he did it in the end, then yesh achrei klum. Then the chalitza and the be'ilah does not take fully effect, and therefore, even after the be'ilah and the chalitza, something else could also take effect. So which means, v'shaloish machlokes bedavar. We have three opinions over here, the Tana in the Mishnah, Rab Nechemya in the Mishnah, and now over here, Abba Yossi ben Yechon. And the Gemara will explain all three opinions. The Tanakama says, Bia the ikela migzar gazrinan. When it comes to bia, so over there is a gzeira. If you do the bia after a get, or you do the bia after a maimer, there's a reason to be geyser that bia should not take fully effect. This is a gzeira that the Gemara mentioned before in Daf Nun, and the Gemara is going to quote it over here again in a second. So by bia, there's a reason to be geyser that it shouldn't take fully effect, so we're geyser. So therefore the bia that you did in the middle does not take fully effect. Chalitza de lekala migzar. By chalitza, there's nothing to be geyser. Whether you did the chalitza in the beginning, the middle, or the end, the chalitza is going to take fully effect. So therefore, there's no problem. Like Gazrina. That's the Tanakama. But Rab Nechemya's opinion is bia nami lekila migzar. Regarding bia, whether you did it in the middle or in the end, there's also no reason to be geyser regarding this bia. Why not? So here the Gemara will bring up again and explain what kind of gzeira there could be over here. So this that we learned already before in Daf Nun, and the Gemara said as follows: Ligzar bia acharaget mishum bia achachalitza. A person could confuse bia that you give, that you do, that is bia that you do after the get, because of bia that's done after chalitza. Right? So if you do bia after chalitza, so then the bia is nothing, because you already did chalitza. But if you do bia after get, that bia is something, because the get does not fully disconnect the connection of the Yavam and the Yevamos. So we don't want to confuse these two. So there's a gzeira here. So now Rab Nechemya holds, no, there's no reason for a gzeira. People see the difference. Given the chalitza da'iraisa, because chalitza is something which is minatayra, everyone knows that takes effect minatayra. Made the yadi, everybody knows the difference between giving chalitza to a Yevama or giving her a get. Vidika Amrit, now, we also said as another Gzeira by Bia. Ligzer Bia Achar Maime, Mishum Bia Achar Bia. We should be Geizer Bia after Maime because of Bia Achar Bia. Bia Achar Bia is something that if you do Bia for one Yevama and then you do Bia for another Yevama, so then the Bia for the second Yevama does not take effect at all. But the Bia that you do for a Yevama after you did already Maimer for another Yevama, that does take effect. So we shouldn't confuse these two. This also people know the difference. Even the Bia Dairaisa, because everybody knows that by a Yevama, the only way you do the mitzvah is the Yibum, the Bia, and so therefore Ameda Yadi. Everybody knows that Maimer is only Midrabanan, and therefore people will not confuse the two. So therefore, Rab Nechemia is not geyser at all. Now, for Abba Yosi ben Chanan, so he said that Bia and Chalitza, I compare the two and I say he's the most machmer. Only if you do it in the beginning, then it takes fully effect. By both of them, if you do it any time in the middle, it does not take fully effect. Savala Kerabanan, it's because he holds like the Rabbanan, the Gazri. The Rabbanan are geyser regarding Bia, that if you do it sometime in the middle, so you have to be geyser Bia after Get because of Bia after Chalitza, or Bia after Maimer because of Bia after Bia. These two things could be confused. So he is geyser like the Rabbanan. And then he's Machmer a step further, the Gaza Chalitza Mishum Bia. And he's also geyser not to confuse Chalitza with Bia, and therefore by Chalitza as well he says that if you do Chalitza not right away, and you do something else before the Chalitza, it also doesn't take fully effect. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yosi ben Yochanan, Abba Yosi ben Yochanan. Hadran Allah Rabbi Gamliel. This concludes the 5th Perek of Masechta Yevamos. Let's begin the 6th Perek. Zok Heilige Mishnah Haba al Yevimtoi. So here the Mishnah begins and discusses the halacha, the mitzvah of how a person is miyavim his yivama. So a person has relations with his yivama. That's the mitzvah, the biyah. Bein b'sheigig, whether it was b'sheigig, meaning that he thought that it was his wife, he thought it was a different woman, and it turns out to be his yivama. Bein b'mezid, or he had relations with her b'mezid, which means that it wasn't l'shem mitzvah, it was l'shem znus, as Rashi here says. Bein ba'inus, or it was done ba'inus, which the Gemara will explain what ba'inus means. Bein b'ratzen, or if it was done b'ratzen, willingly, which means that he did it l'shem mitzvah, that's the simple pshat, and it's really not necessary for the Mishnah to say it, but the Mishnah always includes this, ba'inus, b'ratzen. So, and then the Mishnah adds, afilu hu shaygig, if they had relations, and he was a shaygig, and vihi mezida, and she was a mezid. Or vahu mezid, he was a mezid, vihi shaygeges, and she was a shaygig. Or hu anus, vihi layanusa. The man was an einus, the woman was not an einus. Or the reverse, he anusa, vahu layanus. She was an einus, and he was not an einus. In all these cases, the mitzvah is done. The mitzvah takes effect. And also, echad ha-ma'ara ve'echad ha-goymer. Regarding the biyah, whether he only did the beginning of the relation, the beginning of the act, or he completed it, and kana. The kinyan, it takes effect fully, the mitzvah is done. And also, v'leichilik bein biyah lebiyah. There's no difference between one kind of biyah, another kind. Rashi says whether it's kedarka, whether shaloi kedarka, either way, the relation, the mitzvah takes effect. And v'chein, the same halacha we're saying here regarding the mitzvah of yibum is also regarding other things. Haba alachas mikol ha'arayis b'teira. Person that's over and has a relation with any of the arayis in the Torah. And also oy psulois, or a person that has a relation with any of the psulois that makes this woman now apostle to a kayin. All right, this is a psula to a kayin, and then she becomes a halala. Kagain almana lekayin gadol, almana that marries a kayin gadol, grusha v'chalutza lekayin hedyet, or a grusha chalutza that marry a kayin hedyet, or even the psulim regarding Yidden, mamzeres and nesina li Yisrael, and mamzeres and nesina that are not allowed to marry a bas Yisrael. Or to Yisrael, that is, a Bas Yisrael, a Mamzer, a Bas Yisrael that has a relation with a Mamzer or Lenasan. These are all relations that are psulim. So in any of these ways that we mentioned before, Pasla, he will passel her, or she will become passel to a Kohona as well, and V'loi chilik ben biyah lebiyah. There is no difference between one kind of biyah, another kind of biyah, whether he completed it or whether he didn't complete it. That's how Rashi teaches here, ben biyah lebiyah. Either way, the Aveda is done, or he's going to passel her. Zok the Gemara, Maya Filu. It said in the Mishnah, Afilu. Even if he's a shaygig and she's a mezid, what's this Afilu here in the Mishnah? What's the Chiddush here? So the Gemara explains, Loimi Baya Ka'amar. The Mishnah starts off with one case, and then it says even more of a Chiddush as it goes along. Loimi Baya, needless to say, who's shaygig? If the man was a shaygig, he didn't realize this is his yivame, v'hika machavna le mitzvah. And she knows that this is the mitzvah, and she's having kavanah for the mitzvah. Inami, who mazid, or the case would be he's a mazid, so he's doing it just for znus, not for the mitzvah. V'hika mechavne mitzvah, and she is having kavanah for the mitzvah. Then in such a case, the Mishnah says that the mitzvah takes effect. So here, at least one of them will mechaven for the mitzvah. Even if he was a shegig and she was a mezida, meaning both of them did not have the tarvaya lemechaven l'shem mitzvah. Both of them were not mechaven for the mitzvah. Afila achikana. Nevertheless, even without kavanah for the mitzvah, it takes effect. Tani Rab Chiya, now Rab Chiya added to this, the Braisa says, also the same would be true. Afila shneim shegigim, shneim mezidim, both were shegig, they didn't realize who they're having a relation with, or they were both mezid, they were both doing it l'shem znus, or shneim anusim, they were both on einis. So then, in either way, it doesn't matter, the mitzvah will take effect. Next thing in the Gemara, we'll discuss what exactly einis means over here in this case. We'll see tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem.